All right, you are now tuned in to the Rotated Views podcast. I am your host, Jimmylee Velez. I'm here with Heck, Goose, Gabe, and Colin. Health and wellness. In this episode, the crew welcomes special guest Colin Kirts. We cover topics that range from self-awareness, personal development, mindfulness, effects of the coronavirus, and much more. We wrap the episode up with quotes from Dale Carnegie and Ralph Waldo Emerson. Guys, if you're new, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to download and subscribe. We drop a new episode every Tuesday morning for your listening pleasure. Kicking things off, Colin, thank you for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we are in Lower Bucks County, Bristol, PA, and Colin was kind enough to drive over from Doylestown, correct?
Right.
So anyway, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yes.
On this beautiful rainy Monday evening. So let's jump right in, man. So for those of us who do not know who you are and what you do, let us know.
Well, again, I did reread that before coming in.
Yeah.
I opened a place up in Doylestown in 2018. So we're in our fourth year. Koru Real Wellness, as I think you have on the sheet there.
Yeah.
And obviously our mutual friend Adi has been there. She used to teach yoga there. So she connected us. And I guess I like how you brought up self-awareness. That's a fun through line that seems to be consistent with nearly everything. I know you got a lot of things on that list. I know I could hit on, but
absolutely.
See where you want to go first.
All right, so let's take it back to 2018.
Yeah.
Where were you when you decided, yes, I'm going to open up this wellness center? How did that topic come about? Were you having conversations with people, loved ones, friends? Like, how did it come about?
Yeah, well, we opened more or less officially in the summer 2018. I think it was August. And there was about a year's worth of planning before that.
Yeah.
My business partner and I decided to join forces. Yeah, roughly a year before that. He's a hoot. I was thinking about how to describe him in the car ride over. We're very different looking, but we complement each other perfectly.
Yeah.
I'm more the movement guy and embodying the movement, and he just thinks of the big picture all the time in terms of the business, and we make a good pair. So we knew we wanted to work together, so eventually we found a place, and the key was just scaling up. I had been doing everything that I was already doing on my own on a smaller scale.
Okay.
And we knew we could work well together, and I had worked with his dad before, and then eventually, unfortunately, he passed away early 2017. Yeah, that was a big deal, obviously. So that brought us together closer.
Sure.
We became brothers, and it's been great. It's been really, really good. I think, actually, I know you brought up COVID. We're in the best place we've ever been. Not post-COVID, obviously. I don't know if that's fair to say. Probably not. But as a business, I think we're in the best place we've ever been. We're certainly having the most fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which is odd. I know. Maybe it sounds a little strange.
So, how did you come up with the name? Talk about that logo. Where did all this come from?
The name, I'm sure. Like even with this place, although you have a name to work right off of, and everything. I remember we came up with so many different names, and we had to trash so many of them. And the key word, Koru, eventually just became a cool word that made sense to us. It means new life, growth, strength, and peace, and it's a symbol. You guys obviously know the rock, or like the Maori tribe and feet. Yeah, it's a Maori word. It's the spiral. It's a very universal symbol, basically. So it's kind of ubiquitous, and I'm sure Emerson knew about it.
Yeah.
Basically, that word coupled with the real is kind of the juicy stuff. Honestly, wellness is just a catch-all because we had to couple with some kind of industry or some kind of business, and wellness was the only one that made the most sense. We actually think of it more like a school, though, like an education center. And I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going to be able to talk the whole time, so you'll have to interrupt me.
No, it's absolutely fine. So
I can keep going. I don't want to.
Yeah, no, cool. So what services do you guys provide? What kind of, and how did you develop that? And then maybe if you consider it a school, is there a curriculum or something that someone would follow?
Very much so, especially that's probably why we're having more fun, because we figured out the curriculum. We figured out the foundation more than we had then. Even though it's been consistent, we have a lot more clarity now. I think our most sort of gimmicky thing, even though it's not a gimmick, is the ice bath. We offer ice and sauna sessions to people, and they're surprisingly popular. Hope you guys come.
Yeah.
You literally sit in 30-degree water.
Whoa.
And breathe.
I've never done it before. So definitely want to experience that.
Cold showers are a good start. Even just going out in the rain right now.
Cold showers.
Cold showers are a popular start. Yeah. Yeah. Have you guys heard of Wim Hof? He's a relatively popular guy in that kind of world, but obviously So, all right, only 20% of us know him in this room. But in a lot of settings, he's more popular. Laird Hamilton is a guy who's a big wave surfer. His wife, Gabby Reese. There's so many relatively popular people who have, or bigger names, if you will, who have more or less normalized these kinds of practices. And I was already really into it going way back to 2009. I just didn't know what the hell I was doing. I thought I was just this. Well, I was a weird guy, but I thought I was even weirder until I realized this was a thing people were doing. I was already enjoying just going out and being in the cold.
Yeah.
Going way back to 2009. But eventually I realized this is a thing, and you can study it, and there's actual research as to why it's good, and it has a lot of history. It's centuries old, this practice of just probably even more than centuries, but going in hot and cold.
Yeah.
Like, just like the earth requires you to be able to do. So it's probably our most sort of like unique on the surface offering, but it's not part of the core curriculum, I would say.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just a cool offering that definitely stands out. The curriculum goes all the way back to, honestly, even when I was in college. I've always been really curious, and this is true, even back when I was studying in college. I've cared about what's most consistent. That thing that I've cared about is like what is kind of true no matter who you are or where you are or when you were. Like, what are the through lines? So eventually I really dug into like old stories and really religion. Actually, my degree is religious studies, believe it or not.
Right.
Which some people are surprised by, but maybe not you guys. And they're the oldest stories, religious stories. And what to me is most real is that which endures and is consistent, and we can all kind of connect to. So we build a curriculum with that awareness.
I love that. So is that where you find truth? Is that so in the search, are you seeking truth? Are you seeking, because I find myself, I'm like, well, what's the truth? What's the real?
Well, blessed, I'm sure. Is a
yeah. I mean, that's how it's almost like this very cool journey begins to unfold when you're seeking, when there's almost like there's meaning, or like you're digging for gold, and it's like, what is it? I just want to know. And then while you're doing that, the journey really is the probably most important part of the process, right? And it's going, and it's like going through those conversations, whether they're odd or they're unique and just different. It's that, whatever that is, it's like this is part of it. And so I stopped, when we had Adi on, she's like, you keep looking for, she was almost like laughing. She's like, you're looking for me to explain where your mind's, basically I was trying to ask her, where's my mindset supposed to be when I walk into your class? And she's like, the clarity is up to you. I mean, it's going to be different for everyone. And so that's what I guess I'm going to ask you. What should someone's mindset, where should they be when they're seeking your services or your expertise? Where should they be mentally, I guess?
Open to learning.
Love it.
Yeah, we're working right now on developing online courses so we can continue to grow and not just be in like the time for money model. And it's one of the obvious products that we need to develop, and I'm constantly, it's a big part of what I'm focusing on privately on my own right now. And developing our, so to speak, avatar, our customer avatar, for you guys. I'm sure you've had to think about that. I think it's probably pretty normal for marketing and branding. And I keep every time I come back to it, it's not about age. It's not about like fitness. It's not about anything other than, because we work with people of all ages. The variety couldn't be more, honestly. It's just open to learning is the consistent piece. curious and open to learning, and probably a little bit aware already that they're needing something new, something that hasn't been clicking in the way they want it to. And back to that curriculum, if you don't mind, because I think it's relevant. Again, it goes all the way back to at least probably 2007 or so when I really started studying relevant stuff.
Yeah.
And even just in like the last year, though, we've kind of been able to give it some real bones and movement. Hence movement matters, and generally movement is the consistent sort of tool that we use. And we have a phrase: "You are life, life is movement." But that's kind of meaningless without giving it like some foundation. So
sure.
It's connectivity, continuity, creativity, chaos, actually, and then communication or community.
So that 5 C's?
Yeah, good alliteration. Nice. It helps. Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, and it continues to make sense, and we're building everything kind of with that foundation, with that curriculum.
So that was developed based off of the previous years, right? Based off experience, you kind of saw
trial and
worked.
error.
Yeah, exactly. And was that based off of your own clients, your own experience, a combination of both, conversations?
All of the above. Yeah. Context would be the 6th.
There it goes.
Yeah.
Context.
Yeah, I mean, there's always another one. Some people say, "What about controls?" Like, well, we can fit that into something. Let's not go crazy.
Yeah.
The number 6 seems like enough.
Yeah.
Context would be the 6th one. Trial and error, conversations, doing the work, and critical thinking, really, just because our consistent question has always been the real part, like what is true for all and what is consistently true, what's kind of inherently unifying. I think everybody cares about what makes them different and what's unique and the distinctions, but that's important. We need, for on whatever scale, we need to be different. We need diversity, and that's a bigger conversation perhaps, but it's true on every scale. But also we need to understand what the heck makes us the same, or what's similar, and what can we agree on, honestly. So the mission kind of has a bigger, more cultural intention, because I think we're honestly a little confused about what the heck we should even agree on as an animal, as a human animal. And that's actually what I care the most about, is trying to educate about that.
Yeah.
So we've needed to think about it. We've needed to kind of figure this out. And we've come up with a model that we're always trying to poke at, but the key thing that I like about it is it's open-ended, and there is no ending. It's
cool.
Built into it is the reality that there shouldn't be an ending. You asked about, like, how are you supposed to be in your class?
Right.
You're supposed to be you, and you're never going to be anybody but you. And, part of what I think has led us to need to ask these questions is we've been searching for some kind of ending. And that second word, continuity, is meant to imply that that's a mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, it's inherently a fallacy for us to even want that. And never mind the fact that it's sort of a little psychotic to want an ending, but it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So
there might be something there with the human mind, or the thought process of closure. Like, we need closure on something. It has to be like that definite thing, and I'll feel better, right? And you have this, you break up with a significant other or something like that, and you're just like, I need closure. Let's have this final conversation. It's so funny. Whatever that is, what do you think that is? It's like, what is it that we want this closure, that we want the timeline to be from beginning to end, when really it's a circle, right? We want, for whatever reason, we want this straight line of things. I shouldn't say we. Let me use my mind.
Unintentionally.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just like this timeline for whatever reason, the most basic, like, well, that's what makes sense. And so, like, the simplicity and not doing the critical thinking, and it's almost like, I'm just going to accept that. Is it laziness? I think there's a piece of laziness there. Yeah, I don't want to think any deeper. That's it. That's good. Closure. Where's my beer? And I'm serious when I say that, too. It's kind of sad. Sure. But what do you think? What do you think of what is that closure that we want, or we just want a finite answer?
Well, I'm happy. I'd like to hear what everybody thinks, honestly, but I'll throw a little bit back. I guess the knowing that I studied religious studies, and that's my degree, and so I think in those terms, and this religious stories are as far as I can tell, the oldest stories. And they've really informed, I think, kind of how all of us operate, whether we know it or not. Certainly in this country, but probably globally. I think we've kind of just conditioned ourselves to think that there could be or should be an ending. And it shows up consistently in all of our normal activities and normal interactions and literally just how we engage with ourselves and each other. So it mostly comes down to noticing that and just more or less hijacking that pattern. And goals are good, closure is good, but it just depends on the context. Hence, that's the key word actually in the beginning, context. Like, I would want closure with a breakup. There's all kinds of reasons and times and place to want things to be finite and closed, but in another context, they're not really. It's not like you don't still think about it or that you don't still have feelings. But on a broader scale of wanting to try to make everything static and finished and in a box with corners and a product that you can package and it's done and you never have to think about it again, that's crazy. It's never going to happen. And I think that's mostly conditioning, and it comes back to, again, these old stories, which they're not only Christian stories, but just the idea. I mean, there's actually a cognitive distortion called heaven's reward syndrome. The idea that you are, seeking quote unquote heaven. Yeah. You can just think about that over and over in daily context. And I think it shows up everywhere. I mean, to me, I just look at a road and I think, that's a symptom of that programming. A yard is a symptom of that programming. Not necessarily, but it could be. And it's kind of everywhere. Does you think it has to do with order? Like us wanting order? Excessive order. Hence, excessive order. And excess is a really important footnote, and order and chaos, I think people juxtapose. You need both. We need a little order. We need a little chaos. Yeah. Chaos was built into the curriculum on purpose because there's an inherent unpredictability and unknowability, and that it's never going to stop. But too much order is clearly I think we're dealing with people responding to that now more than we have in the past, and it's going to continue to unfold. And it makes sense, not wanting too much order. Yeah. We need some order. And I don't think you can just be you with so much order, right? There's so much, you have to be careful with every little thing you do. And how am I supposed to be me? I'm being everything you're telling me to be because there's so many dead ends. There's so much. It's robotic. What's an example? Yeah. Because even that context, I can imagine you might be referring to a couple of different things. So I'm not sure. I mean, just with what's acceptable, culturally acceptable, and growing up, whatever, depending on the context you're talking about, it was X, Y, and Z was acceptable to say or do, and then all of a sudden, fast forward 10, 20 years, you can't say that, that's offensive, or you can't do this, that's offensive, and you're almost almost walking on eggshells, it feels like, and they're saying, no, but be you. And it's well, I'm one big error, so I can't, you know what I'm saying? It's I'm a human being, so I'm going to mess up, and so, but I can't be that because I'm getting flamed for everything I say, and I haven't. I'm not saying in reality, but I'm saying in my mind I am. I'm almost flaming myself. I'm oh, you can't think like that. Oh, you got to think like this. Oh, you got to do that. Policing yourself. Yes, exactly. The beyond the Big Brother thing too, but it's I feel like there's this hovering, I don't know, whatever that is. But anyway, so it's. But that's an important and very specific context, but you can see how it's similar to the whole, and that detail, it shows up in very unexpected ways. There are a lot of groups where I think they unintentionally, and I think it's mostly unintentionally, which is why I try not to get too caught up in it, because it's it's about awareness. I think what they're mostly unintentionally doing is in trying to make everybody the same, even though they actually are preaching something like diversity. It's there's an inherent flaw built into the mechanism here, where you're going to end up actually. Think about life. Life and distinctions and life and diversity go hand in hand. If we were all the same, or if everything was equal, which I'm sure is kind of what you're also sort of hinting at, we'd have a big problem. Life would theoretically end, to say the least. At the same time, we're all nodding, but at the same time, we obviously need to figure out how to allow for this new emergence and awareness of freedom and individuality without losing what's worked so far. So it's tricky, but trying to get to a place where everything's the same is inherently a terrible idea. And unintentionally, I think people are doing that.
Yeah, and also
have been doing it for a while.
Yeah, and I also it's very interesting you say that too. It just popped in my, not that it just popped in my head, but it reminded me where it's like, and not just the United States. There's other countries though. It's like you preach the freedom, but then you're just bound by so much law, and it's like, what are we doing again? And it's almost confusing. Talk about chaos.
I think our idea of freedom is one of the most confused things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's the idea that we need to think the most about, and we've clearly not been thinking about well enough for a while. I mean,
so what do you think are people, generally speaking, distracted? What is it that we find ourselves not going into those deep thoughts? Are they just accepting? Are they just like not a simpleton, but like you're just like,
it's good ambient noise.
Yeah, it's.
I feel like I'm watching this.
So if you guys do hear like that beautiful, is this a metal ceiling? I don't know what's going on, but you could hear the rain, and it's so if that's that buzzing in the background, we apologize. I actually kind of like it. Is it distraction? Is it just? I alluded earlier, laziness. What is that? Just I don't know.
I think there are maybe two, but three, maybe two for sure factors, and they kind of go all together. I mean, the stories I think are absolutely relevant. The oldest stories, again, being thousands of years old, they've clearly informed how we think, and we need to kind of reconsider a lot of them. We don't need to get rid of them, but we need to reconsider it. And that's inherently informed education, and it's also inherently informed law and legislation. So I think it's mostly about education and the what people want to call politics. So most people, if they're trying to like change something, they go for education, I think. Hopefully, not violence, but education. Obviously, violence, I think, doesn't work, and we can talk about why. But or conventional violence, that is to say. But law is the other approach people try to make, and the problem again, though, is on both fronts, especially law. It's rooted in these old ideas that don't really have a lot of merit today per se. There's aspects of it that all make sense, but it's. I think the problem again primarily comes back to connectivity as our first principle there. Like most of what we think is coming from initially we're thinking in terms of separation and disconnection, how everything is fragmented and separated in different parts. We never look around, or mostly we're not taught to look around and see how everything's connected and interconnected and related. Yeah. And part of an inherently global ecosystem, which COVID, no matter how it started, showed us, I think, pretty well.
Yeah.
It's one way that we could wake up to that at least. But the old story is disconnection and separation, to oversimplify it, and I think we just need to reform that, which is easier said than done, but either legislation and or education is all that I can think of.
Yeah.
But are people lazy and distracted? Yeah, of course, but I try not to dwell on that because I'm lazy at times, and I get distracted. I use my stupid phone as much as some other people. And
of course. Of course. So what makes...
It's all about priorities. How do we prioritize?
That's a good point. What makes these stories last? Is it the truth within them?
It depends which story. I mean, I'm assuming with your reference to Blessed and Emerson that you at least have a Christian foundation.
Yes.
So do I. But, yeah, I think they've endured. I'm good friends with a rabbi. He would tell me over and over that obviously things have endured because there's some sort of inherent truth to it, to use your word. And I think that's probably right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that it shouldn't upgrade and shouldn't evolve and shouldn't sort of be more, shouldn't be reconsidered based on what we now know. There are things we now know that we didn't know, decades ago, let alone centuries and millennia ago. We didn't have microscopes. We didn't have telescopes. We didn't know about microorganisms living on our skin and in our gut, for God's sake. I mean, that alone is a crazy concept once you start to really think about how, like the idea again of freedom, like what the hell does it even mean? You have organisms living within you and on you, and you're inherently dependent upon them every moment of your life. It's an odd. So I think we need to upgrade our stories based on all of that, and doesn't mean get rid of them, like throw the baby out with the bathwater. But they need to be reevaluated, and I think it comes down to power. People trying to just maintain power. To answer your question, why have they endured? It seems like power, which is why people are trying to fight in some respects. Hence your hint at cancel culture, I think.
Yes, exactly.
So to speak.
Yeah,
in quotes.
No, I think
power's the short answer.
There's when
I was in Miami, I didn't do.
So what in your college studies, what was there a common thread amongst what you studied when it came to religion? I do like the part Kuru that has this, it's open-ended. I think it's Buddhism, is they're accepting to new ideas if they see them. I forget what it is. Forgive my ignorance here, but I think it's Buddhism where they're open. If you think differently, then let's talk about it. Almost, it's almost like this open-ended thing, and they're open to changing what's written if it, like you said, fits or it makes sense or upgrades the old thinking. Anyway, to go back to my initial question, what was the common thread?
Yes, I agree with that. The Dalai Lama's, he doesn't preach anything but critical thinking, and he's pretty into science. So he's definitely not just thinking like he did, or like Buddhists apparently or supposedly did centuries ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pretty sure he's point blank said over and over that the most important thing people can do is think critically. Yeah. But it depends on what kind of Buddhist, for the record. And
sure, exactly.
But
a little all over the place there.
Zen Buddhism, whatever it is, Tibetan Buddhism. But we don't need to go into in depth about Buddhism. I would say that the consistent thing is that and maybe a more mystical component would be a different way of putting it, because even really Christianity has the same core, hence you bring up Emerson. I like that was part of the outline. I'm a big fan, and Whitman in particular as well, and there are many good examples of mystics who would fit into the Christian narrative and have the same exact kind of attitude. There are, we know the differences that make Christians, but that's not what you're asking. I think like an openness to mystery is key, which implies newness, which is, again, back to the curriculum. Creativity is meant to point out that there's never going to be the same thing, and you're always going to be adding something new or witnessing something new. So you better get on board with that. Stop trying to keep it the same.
So were you reading, which I actually think that's super fascinating. That's what your degree's in.
It was fun, and it's more relevant now than ever. Like I didn't know what I would do with it, but it makes total sense today.
So are there similar stories across religions, right? And what is that, right? And it's just like, well, how did we split here?
At the core, it's very similar. If you don't get caught up in the power structures and the institutions and the dogma, which is largely projection, I'd say. Very much the same. Very much the same. Similar enough.
So are you learning as much from your clients, students, as they're, I couldn't say they're learning from you, but is that also a learning process for you?
Again, built into the model, again, if you will, which it's not like it needs to be a model, but it's good to know what the hell you're doing. Is the awareness that the learning never stops, and that's part of the continuity. Like I hope I never stop learning. I don't see how you can be alive and not be learning. I think it's a cliche that's been said plenty of times. As long as you're alive, you better be learning, or something like that. If you're not learning, you're dying, or something like that.
Going backwards or something. So what are some of the tools you use or equipment outside the ice baths? Is there anything else people can expect to see there? What kind of equipment were they going to see when they walk in? I saw this really cool walking thing you have. It's like, what is that thing?
I was going to joke, just ice. Everybody just has to ice, no matter what.
Ice.
Yeah. All we do is make everybody sit in ice, and then we tell them when they can get out. That's a treadmill, believe it or not. It's just a fancy treadmill. The key thing there is that you move it yourself. So movement to me is the most obvious. And what does movement even mean? I'm guessing we get to that. But movement is the most obvious kind of way to connect to people and tool that everybody has available. And walking is one of the most important things we need to be able to do. And if you're not able to walk, or if you're losing the ability to walk, that's obviously going to impact your life tremendously.
Yeah.
You don't have to be able to run, but if you're losing that ability and you had it, that's a big deal too. So walking is critical. The gait cycle, as we call it, is critical. And that particular treadmill really exposes where you can learn more and how you can improve it, because nobody's ever fallen off of it, thank God. But I mean, it comes with handles. We just took them off because.
Okay, I was gonna say, it looked like you were just like,
it's more fun without them. We are, and we could do it backwards too. And so it comes with a standard like guard with a monitor, but a lot of people just take them off because it's more fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So there's no electric component to it. It's just a conveyor belt, so to speak, that you move yourself, which you can, once you get a hang of, feels pretty good. You definitely walk better.
Yeah. So what else? What other equipment is there?
That's one of the most important ones. As is the floor. We have a wide variety of clientele, from teenagers who are training for a sport or just know that they too are needing to learn something new or wanting to learn something new. And that's a wonderful thing to see. Young people who care just as much as any other age group.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of them. Like, there are a lot of adolescents and people out of college who do care about understanding these basics as much as people who have been around the block longer. So the floor, believe it or not, is pretty critical. Having an open floor as opposed to just a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
So getting up and down from the floor, knowing how to literally move along the floor. And then there's this machine that's more or less just like a fancy pulley machine, which you can pull the cord, so to speak, like 10 feet, I think. And that's really fun. And then you can explore how you're having to apply force in different ways, and you can move like a ninja, and it looks really fun on videos.
Yeah.
But you can do lots of standard things too with it. And I like doing everything. I do it all. We have all the toys you need with respect to a 10-foot ceiling, so we just can't go climb a rope.
Yeah.
We've got the weights. We do it all.
Yeah.
It's just the bread and butter of what we do with everybody is improve basic movement patterns, and they're universal. Everybody needs them, whether you're my 10-year-old son or the 90-year-old woman that I see once a week. So everybody needs to learn more or less or improve these same basic skills.
Yeah, so one thing that we've all heard, maybe whether it was from our parent, whether it was school and a teacher, I feel like there's the importance of movement within it is posture. Now, what's the importance of posture, right? Like, your mom's always like, sit up, sit up, sit up. And I always feel like, and I'm always like, hunched, and it's like, sit up. And I hear the voices in my, but that's not like, what is the importance of good posture?
We like to call it, so posture is sort of the same word, I would say, as what Adi might call alignment in yoga. That's the more conventional term. We call it posture or alignment, or even just skeletal organization. And it is important, but what the hell does it mean, right?
Yeah.
It depends on context, and it depends on where you're at. So a lot of us do have certain sort of pathologies or dysfunctional sort of tendencies, if you will.
Yeah.
And they show up in often how we sit or lie or stand or walk. And improving them, I say this with the utmost sincerity and awareness of how it can sound. It's not always the most sensitive thing to say. It's actually simple. It's not complicated to change that if you're open to doing it and if you're willing to learn. It's actually it's one of the simplest things that I'm aware of. It might take time. It definitely takes little focus and dedication, but it's relatively simple.
Yeah.
Which is to say, it doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to suffer through it and like get really fit.
Yeah.
Your body is meant to, theoretically, unless you're born with some kind of skeletal handicap, which people have, but they adjust and often are incredibly capable. Your body has a sort of neutral position, if you will. The only constant force on all of us is gravity. And then it's all kind of what we impose upon ourselves, whether we know it or not, whether it's from the inside out or how we sit, stand, walk, do all the things we do.
Yeah.
Which is to say our nervous system can impose a force based on just being tense and tight and creating stress, if you will, holding ourselves a certain way. Or we can just do things and not know why the hell we're doing them, but we did them that way and it was working for that. And that could be as simple as exercising a certain way, or like thinking you need to sit up straight, stand up straight, pull your shoulders back, whatever the heck it is, all the time. And that's a long-winded way of saying that there's a simple way you're supposed to be organized, and if you kind of get out of the way and allow for that organization to re-emerge, assuming you kind of had it as a kid, it will. But it takes time and learning, and most of us seem to not. I think a lot of us don't know how simple that can be, and it's probably the main thing that makes us unique when it comes to movement is we have figured out some ways to make that really simple that work and translate to whatever activity you want to play around with, whether it's literally just enjoying your life, which is what I would highly recommend, or becoming a really good athlete, I was a Division I athlete, or a dancer or a climber or the best dad or mom you can be, whatever it is. It's pretty simple stuff, and it just takes seemingly some reprogramming. Pulling your shoulders back is extremely overrated, I will say, though. Well, because again, context. Without understanding where your feet are and what your feet are doing and how your ankles are organized and where your hips are and all of these things, pulling your shoulders back can actually be pretty destructive. That's one of the provocative ones I like to point out. Don't pull your shoulders back unless you have a reason to.
Yes. What about stretching when it comes to movement and the importance of is there such thing as overstretching or when someone says, I pulled the muscle,
you become hypermobile.
Okay, there it is. So explain that.
Well, if you it's cool to see what people do in like Cirque du Soleil or the circus in general, and I'm jealous. I want to be able to do a backflip. That's the skill I want to add, but I'm not able to right now. But it would require me to work on like thoracic mobility quite a bit, so to speak, which doesn't have to mean a damn thing to anybody. The point is, stretching matters, but again, context. So if you become hypermobile, you might lose your capacity to pick up something really heavy. Right? So it depends on what your intention is. And just becoming really mobile is not necessarily you're not going to necessarily yield the results you may want. Mobility in general, though, is something people need to work on because we tend to have pretty chronic, tight ankles and hips for the most part in our culture. You can imagine why, I suspect. And also tight chests. Like our chests tend to be pretty tight. So improving range of motion and mobility for most people is pretty important. You can go too far, hence excess. Think about it in terms of chaos and order. Like if you just create a completely, flaccid, hypermobile animal, it's not going to know what the heck to do when it comes to grabbing something or climbing or even maybe walking. So you can have too much of anything.
So what
stretching matters, though. It just depends on
absolutely.
What, yeah.
So where is it? What's the blame here? Because where we have these old stories. 'Cause I want to keep going back to the truth, right? And well,
that's why I brought up chaos and order again, because it's the same. We call it somatic education, by the way, which is basically the
and
word.
Explain that after.
It essentially means that everything is a reflection of itself, meaning like our pathologies with our bodies are reflections of the world around us, and so on and so forth. It doesn't mean anything bad or good. It just is the truth. There's like inner, like outer. It can go to how you're needing to, stand up right now.
We're talking about posture too much over here.
Yeah, you're making me nervous. Trying to fix myself.
And the thinking that we need, basically, it's just like the field of thought that shows that encourages you to look at how everything is inherently a reflection of itself, and you are a reflection of your environment, and we are reflections of each other. And I think it's absolutely true.
Yeah. Do we lose value though? So I guess to go back to the problem, is it technology? Is it advancement in itself? It's almost like eating itself, right? So why is our posture what it is, or why are we tighter on our joints now? Is it because, well, some of us, right? Let's go back 1,000 years ago. Maybe working on a farm or agricultural lifestyle was normal, but also now normal is sitting at a computer and typing for certain people, right? It's not for everyone, but there's something there where technology came in and kind of advanced us in one thing, but then almost like we went the other way with our own nature almost.
Yeah.
And
what was the word you used? Not problem. What was it you said? The blame?
The blame. Like, what's the blame?
Yeah.
Technology!
Wouldn't it be nice if there was a demon we could just point at, right?
And that's
some kind of enemy. You can imagine I'm going to probably say that I don't think there is an enemy.
Yeah.
Damn it.
It was like the layup. I don't know if you're into basketball, but it's kind of like the alley-oop.
Yeah.
For you to slam dunk it.
I know. I'm going to dunk it. There is no blame. I don't know of one. I think it would be nice. I think at some level we kind of wish there was, because it would be easier. It would be a little, I think that would be the lazy answer, to be honest. I know there's a popular school of thought that generally steers us to like a pre-agricultural time, like a primal time and primitive, and reconnect with your caveman components, and that's cool, and the way of thinking matters, and it makes sense. But if we all were to just go like full wild, we'd lose a lot, and I think it's fairly obvious what we'd lose. I think the challenge is to figure out how to synthesize it all, to integrate it all. I don't want to get rid of technology in general, and the idea that we could is a little strange to me, because it depends on how far back you want to go. To where do you stop? Do you stop with the wheel? Do you stop with the cup? Do you stop with clothing? It's a relatively absurd notion to me. So generally speaking, enemies don't make much sense. I think it's pretty rare when there's actually somebody or something to demonize. I tend to go with a both and kind of attitude, not an either or. I think, again, though, angels and demons, that's an old story, right? So let's poke at that one, too. But
it's interesting, right?
God and devil and all of it. And even good and evil, right and wrong. So it's not to say that those things aren't necessarily relevant or true even, but it's how relevant, and is it a priority to be thinking that way? Probably not, and it doesn't seem like it's serving our evolution a whole lot. So I'm delighted we have these mics that I can ramble into.
Exactly.
And we can jibber jabber on and talk about this stuff. And I'm glad I had the car to drive here. I wish it was electric. I wish I didn't, have the emissions.
It's a nice car too, by the way.
It's just a Honda CR-V. But thank you.
Nice.
The fanciest Honda on the road. Yeah.
I like it.
Well, I have it tricked out and everything. So
very nice.
But the blame. I don't know if you want to think about that longer, but I in short, I don't think there is a blame. I think I think we need to learn, and we need to level up, we need to evolve, and we need to kind of stop looking for a scapegoat. It's bullshit to me. In general. It's lazy.
I love it.
Completely agree. Yeah.
So let's go back to.
But why are people so prone to doing that? Is I try to have empathy for the fact that is a tendency, but I don't think most people know why they're doing that. I do think it has to do with this thinking and these stories and the conditioning and the education. And it's not good. I don't think it's going to be a quick fix.
That's
to
interesting.
say the least. We've got to be patient.
So let's talk very quickly about the pandemic and how it affected, whether it's good, bad. It is what it was to the business. Was it, and how do you perceive it? Was it good for you guys? Was it a launching pad for you guys? We had several businesses come on here and say they've catapulted because of it. We've had people on here that almost broke everything apart, including their family and marriage. And so you have everything in between.
Yeah, there's both, honestly, and different topics for each. So professionally or with the business, it was, of course, I mean, the first couple of weeks were, who the heck knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
We were in a secure enough position to say, well, let's do what everybody's doing and ride this out and see what there is to see. And fortunately, things did work the way they worked. And the worst thing business-wise was we lost contractors who were teaching classes, actually AD, for example, and people like that, because it was just pointless for them to still be part of the program. They needed to figure out what they were going to do for themselves.
Sure.
And the flip side of that, though, is we turned our entire classroom into recording sets. So what we did was pivot to more of this. The podcast was already happening at Koru, but we do more of that, basically. More recording, more... Well, I mentioned the courses and realizing, well, this is what we wanted to do anyway, so let's invest in some equipment and rock and roll.
I love it.
Yeah, so we literally turned our entire classroom into sets, and now, just in the last month, we're kind of bringing back some things from pre-COVID, like larger events, not classes, but honestly, classes were never really all that big of a revenue stream for us. There's so many other businesses that do that better. So more events, actually men's events are very popular at this point, and more of that's going to be happening. More just bigger group, like day retreats are happening, and that's partly why in the beginning I said I think as a business we're in the best place we've ever been, and we're having more fun because we were able to ride it out. We were able to clean things up. There was a lot of getting rid of this and just saying let's not even waste time and energy on that anymore, because time and energy are two of the most important things we have.
Yeah. And
on that note, on a personal level, I did definitely go through some major shifts, but I don't know how much you want to hear about all of that.
Yeah.
But Koru and me, they go hand in hand, so it was a wild ride, and we are definitely in a better place than pre-COVID, so to speak. That's always a funny phrase to me. Like, it's a relevant phrase. It makes sense, but it's a funny idea.
So, I like this. The men's retreat, or what?
Yeah,
give us a little bit more detail about that. I'm fascinated.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed getting groups of men together for different activities. Starting in 2017, it's kind of like what we grew up probably doing, just hanging out with our friends. And I think a lot of men eventually either, clearly not you guys, you got a good gang, but lose that or forget how important it is and don't prioritize it. And I know for myself, and it seems like a lot of other men, it needs to become more of a priority for various reasons, and I put the energy into making it an option. So, and for that matter, I think it's also important that women have time with women, and we had a women's group actually. Yeah. We literally hosted a women's group. I didn't run it, of course, but equally important. And it's important that obviously men and women have time together, and everybody in between. But men need time with just men for various reasons, and we are definitely making that more of a priority. I love hosting it. We basically just do a whole day event where we ground, if you will, together. We move. We kind of just get, so to speak, into our bodies. There's all these wonderful phrases that I kind of roll my eyes at sometimes, but they do make sense. And then we go through something together, and the most obvious thing that we can do is the ice together at Koru. And it is a great kind of trial by fire situation. It's really, you kind of bond over it. And we have a good meal. We unpack what we've been through together so far. We feel a lot closer. And we reflect on a lot of different things. We'll do a little bit more movement, perhaps, and some kind of closing ceremony or ritual that ultimately, generally, people feel pretty fulfilled, which comes back to that whole, like, needing a sense of purpose and needing just joy, really. I think if there's a product to it, it's actual connection and community and joy. And something that you can sustain and continue to build on. Yeah. I think it's what we were supposed to have as a community, to whatever however we lost it. I think we're supposed to be able to have that as a species.
Yeah.
And we can rebuild it.
Yeah. So, one of in the Bible, and I just want you to quickly talk about this charity, helping those in need, maybe the weak. What and why triggers us to feel so good when we're helping out someone, even if it's not in vain, like you're genuinely helping whoever it is. Like, for example, right here, there's ads and a collection of clothes for to donate for people of need, and I remember bringing in the bag and genuinely feeling good because I knew we've gotten a lot of insight over the past few years on this podcast for people that were specifically helping homeless and all this, and so when we felt that. And now it's not just like throwing a bag into this big metal container in the parking lot outside your favorite food, your grocery store. And now it's like, I know where this is going. This is literally going to warm a back. And I get like the chills talking about it. What is that? And where does that all fit in? Is that all part of the fulfillment? Is that all part of the satisfaction? What is that? Giving, charity.
Asking basically about like the mechanics of service, right?
Yes. Yes.
And it's definitely not limited to the Bible, although Jesus is clearly a relevant figure in that regard. And so you mentioned Buddhism earlier, and even in yoga with regard to Adi, there's literally something called karma yoga where you're meant to build your self-awareness, arguably, and sense of self through service. And I think that's one of the key through lines, as is, quite frankly, love, which, why the hell not? Yeah. But the mechanics, if we need to have a kind of understanding of it, I would go back to connectivity and the interconnectedness of literally everything. So why does everybody feel some kind of satisfaction or fulfillment when they genuinely give and are truly presenting something to another? Probably because whether we know it or whether it's like conscious or not, there's an inherent like actual feedback with what you think is someone else and yourself, or what you think is something else and yourself, because there is no, again, actual separation or disconnection. So if there is a mechanics or physics to it, I would say it's literally because you're giving to your quote-unquote self. And that doesn't mean you can't become selfish when you do it that way, or narcissistic that way. It's almost impossible, which is to say, you might feel, or somebody might interpret that and think I'm going to be motivated to just be of service for myself. Right. It wouldn't even work. You would end up, I think the technology, if you will, of our bodies and of life is such that it wouldn't even work. You would end up opening your heart, or something would change internally. Your nervous system would literally change. You wouldn't end up thinking of it as just for yourself. That's such an old story, right? It's literally one of the oldest kinds of transformations, from being all about yourself and selfish to what we call selfless. But I wouldn't say it's selfless. It's just evolved and mature and good, hopefully. Yeah. It's not neat. I don't think you need to call it selfish or selfless. It's just aware.
So what about...
How could you not? Yeah, I don't see how that couldn't be implied with education, honestly, since you want to tie that into Koru. Yeah.
Yes. So you hear a lot of teachers say, I learned more behind the podium than, in front of the podium, so to speak. And I guess that's where I was kind of trying to loop everything in a very interesting way. And it was just like, whoa. And to be of service, and it's like, it's funny because it's like, this is my business, and but it's like at the same time, like, dude, you're exponentially growing also, and it's like, we need to, and it still goes back to that cyclical, is that the word, thing where we're constantly evolving, and hopefully it's a snowball in a very good way, right? Mm-hmm. And just growing saying all that to become more self-aware and having this self-awareness, and what does that look like for you? Maybe not the ultimate goal, because here I go again with some like finite thing, but what is the...
I have goals. Of course I have goals. Yeah.
So what is that, like the self-awareness and the growth? Is there being a lifelong learner? So you're going to do this...
Oh, yeah, beginner's mind, right?
Yes. Yeah. So what's that look like for you to become self-aware?
Like personally?
Yes.
I immediately go to like the smallest scale that I need to take responsibility for. Talk about order, if you will. I think, okay, so I'm useless if I'm not taking care of myself. I mentioned I have a son, so family immediately.
Yeah.
And that extends out to siblings and parents. Friends, core root community, larger community. And eventually you, I think at this point, can't... Well, it depends on how secure you are and how like safe you are in general. You can think globally, and I do not know how to do it any other way. Where I like, okay, it's all about both my smallest possible scale, which is me and my body, and my mind, as we call it, and the global context and the global culture and humanity at large and the life at large. So knowing that that's how I don't know any other way to operate at this point, and that I think it's good to operate with that general kind of awareness, thinking and being able to think in both ways at the same time. That's and cool. With that kind of nuance and sense of scale, it comes down to like, all right, so what can I practically be doing to help? So Koru can grow, we can become more of we can have a greater reach. What we are sharing can reach more people. We can hopefully become a larger retreat center has always kind of been the mission.
Yeah, that's cool.
With the more kind of like land-based model where we're literally like getting people to... I think there are good models for what I'm talking about, but I don't have an obvious one again, besides like certain kinds of schools. But I do think inherently focusing on getting people to not be away from technology, but relate to technology differently and grow food and get back to the basics, all the while knowing, this is why technology is not something to skip or forget about, that global sea levels are going to rise. I think that's inevitable in our lifetimes, and certainly my son's lifetime. I mean, the ice caps are going to melt. I don't think that's going to change. Seems pretty likely. Yeah. Last I heard. And that's going to have all kinds of ripple effects on us and everybody that are barely even imaginable, even though we can kind of foresee some of it. Knowing all of that and knowing that it is good to be thinking about how we can use our technological advancements to clean things up faster or to, I don't want to sound too out there, but maybe even become, I don't want to leave Earth. I don't at all. I love Earth. I think we need to clean Earth up before we try to like jump ship, but it would be smart to think about, I guess, continuing to explore outside of Earth and the solar system. Yeah. So I'm thinking about all of that at once. Yeah. And at the, and day to day, it's like, okay, so you just make sure you're disciplined and you have the time. And obviously, again, safety and security is implicit with being able to even think this way for now. I'm going to go talk to guys in Bristol I've never met because that's a good first step for now, or a good step for today. And that's awesome. And it's relevant. And you mentioned snowball, or who knows what's going to come from any little thing. So make the most of every little detail is probably the best answer. Yeah. But make sure you start with yourself.
I love that.
Because otherwise you're going to probably have to clean up something later.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know how, what condition you woke up this morning or feeling what compelled emotion you have, but is there anything you want to share with the world, or maybe a message, or I don't know, maybe some deep or maybe shallow, very basic message? Is there anything that's on your mind that you just want to, I just want to allow you to have that, whatever that is, if there is something. Yeah.
Maybe just that last piece, like start with what's right in front of you.
I love that.
I don't know what else anybody could possibly do that would be worthwhile, and it's the same for me every day. I mean, start with what's right in front of you. And I know we probably can think of like more popular people who have a more potentially similar message, and I'm not echoing their message verbatim, but I am pointing to the value of, you brought up order, but the value of making sure that you are taking care of yourself as much as possible all the time. I don't know what else. Yeah. If we all did that, I bet a lot of things would be different and probably better on every scale. I often think it'd be fun if politicians are just one example, but let's take away their suits and their nicer clothing and make them all like wear bathing suits or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
For various reasons, I think that would be really productive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's expose what's really going on here.
Yeah.
Hence I prioritize the body and movement, because mostly if you can't move well, and if you're not healthy, you're going to be something's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's a terrible cycle, I think, that we've normalized, and it doesn't have to be that way. There are plenty of examples across the globe and throughout time where people have not become decrepit and useless and old, so to speak. That is not the necessary story for humanity.
Yeah. Love that. So if folks wanted to connect with you, the Wellness Center, what's the best way they can either reach you, website or social media handles? What's the best way someone can contact you?
Once you get in an ice bath, we have a telepathic connection.
Nice. I've never done it. I really want to do one.
Just automatically
it's
connected.
Just telepathy. Yeah, exactly. I mean, carrier pigeons are good after that. But we use cell phones, and we use email.
Smoke signals?
Social media.
Smoke signals?
Smoke signals from Bristol to Doylestown. That's about as far as it gets. Yeah, we're really trying to, more than ever now, build our reach and our network and our quote-unquote following, and we are developing products that are going to be able to reach a larger audience, so it's not going to be required for people to come in. There's your net. So social media for sure, yeah, because a lot of things will be more and more advertised through that, and we're completely redoing our website. I keep saying that for months, but it's true. It's just taking time to make it, to relaunch it.
Yeah.
Social media, email, phone. I mean, you'll probably be able to share all of that, right?
Yeah.
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 Absolutely.
Yeah.
What are your handles? Or how to get a hold of you, or like the social media?
I didn't know if you'd like put it in like copy or something.
I could put it in too, but at least to announce it.
At Koru Real Wellness.
Okay.
Yep.
That's
KORU. Yeah, we're pretty much Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Yeah.
Okay. So the same handle for everything?
Yep.
So what is it again? Spell it?
KORU Real Wellness.
Okay.
Koru Real Wellness. And you can also usually find with my name, but better to look that way.
Okay.
All right, cool. So we like to wrap things up with quotes, and the first one is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. I love that. And the second one by Dale Carnegie. Today is life the only life you are sure of. Make the most of today. Get interested in something. Shake yourself awake. Develop a hobby. Let the winds of enthusiasm sweep you through. Live today with gusto. Health and wellness. In this episode, the crew welcomes special guest Colin Kirts. We cover topics that range from self-awareness, personal development, mindfulness, effects of the coronavirus, and much more. We wrap the episode up with quotes from Dale Carnegie and Ralph Waldo Emerson. Awesome. Guys, thanks again for joining us. The Rotated Views podcast was produced for self-development purposes. Huge shout out to our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Blessed Lifestyle brand. That is BL3SSED.com. Also sponsored by The Motivation Files Unleashed. This motivational mixtape will be your fuel for success. Available on all platforms. Guys, don't forget to visit the website, JimmyleeVelez.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rotated Views. If you have any inquiries or questions, email us at info@JimmyleeVelez.com. On behalf of myself and the rest of the crew, we wish you massive success. Stay blessed.